Hi, this is James Staake, and you are watching The Awakened Nation with Brad Zollis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zollis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things to Awakened Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to honor our guest today, James Staake. Let me tell you, I'm a boomer and I'm sitting here, and sometimes I say to myself, what happened to my country? And today's guest, we're going to talk about something that has just raised its ugly head over the last 5 years, and that is being canceled, cancel culture. And this gentleman and his family went through the biggest canceling I've ever heard of or seen. And it's amazing that this group that we call Democrats is supposed to be the most tolerant ever. And yet you're going to be blown away by James's story. James Staake, please welcome to Awakened Nation, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a couple weeks now.
Awesome. And I have to thank our good friend Rob Anspach for introducing us because we're both Pennsylvania boys that grew up, hunting and fishing. And this is America, where you let people live their life the way you want. So I want to dig into your story, and your book is fascinating. I endorsed it, by the way.
Thank you for that.
Let's start at the beginning. You own a company that makes American flags. Am I correct on that? And
Yep.
tell us what happened as you're being a patriot, a true patriot. Making the American flag is nothing bigger. It's nothing bolder and better than 4th of July, American flags, and fireworks. So let's start at the beginning. What happened?
Well, in the very beginning, it started in California in 2018. My son was 6 years old at the time. We had some friends over at our house for a UFC event. And it was just, it was relatively early in the night. The kids were out just riding their bikes. We lived in a rural area in San Diego, so the kids were all just kind of running out
Right.
in the woods and stuff. And my son comes in and says that he has a business idea, and he pitches it to me and a group of about five of my friends. And the idea was real simple, that he noticed that he knows I'm a carpenter and I make things and I've got a ton of tools. Mommy's an artist. She worked at Trader Joe's doing all the corporate art there. And he put them together and said, why don't we make wood American flags, and mommy will paint artwork on. And me and my buddies just kind of sat there. All of my buddies, all in the trades and doing different construction stuff. So all of us know that in California, when you're waiting for a permit, it could take forever, and you
Right.
can't take on new customers because now you're putting yourself in a bad position with your customers on who's going to get priority and that kind of thing once the permits come in. And so you just kind of are in limbo. So in those times that I would be in limbo,
Hmm.
my son came up with an idea to fill those gaps by making American flags out of wood in our garage there. And my wife, when she got home from her day job, she would do the artwork on it. So the next morning, I had kind of forgotten it, even though that me and all my friends thought, "What a great idea! That's really a good idea.
Yeah.
I should do that." But the next
Hmm.
morning, he comes in the room and wakes us up and wants to start the business like that day. And this is like a Sunday.
I
But
love that. I love this kid.
yeah, he was not hearing anything but yes. Um, so I look over at my wife, and the truth of the matter was that we were less than paycheck to paycheck. We were struggling in California to make it. We were renting a house, and we didn't have any money to make a flag, let alone start a business. So my wife did tell me that we had, this is like in like a bed conversation before we get up. And she's like, my mom and dad gave us a $50 gift card for Home Depot. We could use that. and said, all right. So me and Max headed down to Home Depot. We bought enough material for a couple of flags. We made the first one that Sunday. My wife had stars on it. We posted it just kind of as the father and son Sunday project. Hey, look, we're kind of
Yeah.
joking. Hey, we're going to start a new business, father and son flag making and stuff. And within about an hour or so, I had someone offer me, hey, I'll buy that. And then by the morning, we had a couple more orders and people were requesting different artwork on it. So we put those up, um, took pictures of those, and then people started seeing, hey, I can put whatever I want on it. Within like 3 weeks, we had like 50 orders.
You're kidding.
So the
That's
side,
amazing.
oh, it was nuts. Everyone in our whole community was supporting us. After about 2 months, we realized, okay, so either this is going to be a hobby that really, takes up all of our free time, which we need. I mean, because we're falling behind. So we need that extra, money that's a hobby.
Yeah.
Or do we leave our jobs and go at this, 100% and see if we
Right.
can actually, make something out of it? So, um, we bought a little bit of time, but we had in Valley Center where we were, San Diego, we have a little festival at Bates Nut Farm that everyone from town and people come all the way from LA, like 100 miles away to buy pumpkins at this pumpkin patch. So,
Right.
and it's just a carnival atmosphere, great stuff. There's a petting zoo and all kinds of stuff there. So, but they also have a bunch of vendors. And so I went to the same high school as the new owner who inherited the farm from her grandfather and father. It's been in their family forever. And at the very last minute, she put me in a booth there. And that booth, I think that first day we did like $5,000 in sales. So came back the next day
Wow.
with just a small town thing. So we're thinking, like, if we went to like big places, like big rodeos, and a friend of mine, Ian Milligan, he's just he's a whiz. And he said, James, if you took this to the National Rodeo Finals in Vegas, all those, you'd have every crazy redneck in the nation all in one spot walking by. Like, this is a no brainer.
Right.
So that was just a few months down the road. So we had a few months to kind of prepare and build a booth and really get ourselves ready for it. And we did, and absolutely crushed. I think we did like 25,000 in sales that weekend or that week. So we know we have a business. We know we have a product that's unique. We've even been at different rodeos and music festivals and gun shows where there's other flag makers, and they're a lot less expensive than ours, but people will walk from their booth to our booth and just be like, yeah, what they've got is, what you guys are doing is next level. This is
Yeah.
part of what they're doing is they're just making like a porch piece of, art for the porch, what you guys are doing or something like generational, like handed down type of thing. So, so the business did great. I mean, we just drove around the country. We went all the way to Sturgis from San Diego. So, halfway
Wow.
across the country and sold our flags at the motorcycle rally. We went to Reno Rodeo. I mean, we were literally going all over the country. Would leave for, 4 or 5 days, make a bunch of sales, come home, make as many as we could, do little rodeos at home or little side gigs at home and art fairs and that kind of stuff locally
Right.
on the weekends, and then just grind. It was 2 years, actually about 3 years of not a single day off. We just grinded.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, completely destroyed our business model of the face-to-face
Right.
interaction with customers. Most of our designs came from that interaction. People saying, "Hey, would you do an Iwo Jima, or would you do this flag or that flag?" And up until those customers came to us, no, we hadn't. But why wouldn't we do it? We're being that close to the hardcore patriots out there, you
Right.
get a good look into what that market wants. Like what artwork do they really want on
Right.
their flag? So for 2 years, we had a very, very close relationship with our customers, and then COVID happened and um, basically took that away. Up until that point, we didn't really sell online. We didn't, I mean, you could go to our website, but it really wasn't why we were
Yeah, it wasn't as intimate, and I completely understand. I've been to motorcycle rallies, and I'm a good old boy at heart, and
Hmm.
these people are salt of the earth, and they love America, and you're providing a custom piece of artwork rather than just a cookie cutter. So I love this. Sorry to interrupt. I see your business model. I see it right away, and God bless. This is an awesome story. Please go ahead.
So I'm glad you like the business model because later on in the story that actually becomes a huge part of our story. So
Right.
we travel around the country, everything is going great. COVID hits, we immediately have to figure out, I'm a good carpenter, I'm not a tech person, but we had to figure out how to, run a business based on a website and emailing and chat rooms and, social media and that kind of thing. So good thing was that our business had done really well so far. So we had a little bit of a window that we could learn it. We did learn it. And we actually grew during the first year of COVID a lot, actually.
Wow.
So we really figured out that social media thing very, very well. And we were selling each month $20,000 worth of flags on our website. And we weren't really working it that hard. I mean, we were working 7 days a week, but we were working 10, 12 hour days, not 15 to 18-hour days as we
Yeah.
were, when we were doing the rodeo grind around the country. So it was winding down to a 60 to 80-hour work week, which was kind of nice for us after the grind that we were in doing the rodeo circuit.
Yeah.
So everything is going so great that in the middle of COVID, we just said, you know what, California is absolutely nuts. We got to get out of here. We remembered a conversation. The reason we chose Tennessee was so chance, but when we were in the National Rodeo Finals in Las Vegas, a couple came up to us, the Udalls, and they just had like such a, I don't know, just something about them just stuck out, and you could just tell how happy they were. You could just tell how like honest and hardworking, and just like I don't know, Mr. Udall just has kind of like a swagger about him. And he spent a couple hours in the booth, and he ended up buying about $800 worth of flags from us, one flag for each one of his kids.
Wow.
And I said, you don't want a flag? And he's like, nah, it's not really in my budget to spend money on me. And I'm looking at his boots and his watch, and I could tell that he has money, but the way that he phrased it was just very interesting to me. And it always stuck with me that he didn't have money like that for himself. He has all the money in the world for his kids and his wife but not for himself.
Mhm.
And so in talking to him, I just really, really like this guy. I always remembered what he said about Tennessee, how highly he spoke of it. When he found out that we were from California, he was like, you know what? You guys don't belong in California. You guys belong in Tennessee. You need to move to Tennessee.
I was
Like
just gonna say, you don't
people like
belong.
you don't belong there. So
Right.
so we kept on grinding away for another year, but that was always in the back of my mind that Mr. Udall, like, so Ginger started looking at houses in the middle of COVID. We just had to get out of California. We were pushed too far with the California craziness. So Ginger started looking at Ginger's my wife, obviously.
Yes.
Ginger started looking at houses here in Tennessee. And well, she after about 6 months of looking, day after, morning, day, and night, uh,
Right.
she found our dream house, and we got my mom and dad to move with us. They live in the granny flat. We have our dream house. We have a dream property. I have my dream shop, which we had to completely remodel to get it, but it was here. It just was very
Right.
old and run down. So as we're driving across country to move our family from San Diego to Tennessee, I still was remembering Mr. Udall. And turns out he was only about an hour off of out of the way from California to our new house. So with my wife pulling a trailer, my brother driving my truck, and then me driving a Penske truck pulling a trailer, our entire caravan rolls through this very small little town in rural Tennessee. And about 10 minutes, when I'm about 10 minutes away, I call Mr. Udall and I say, Mr. Udall, this is James Staake from your American Flag Store. I just wanted to call and ask you something. He's like, James, I was just thinking about you. Um, and my son is stationed in the Navy in San Diego. I'm going to go see him. I wanted to take you out to dinner. And I was like, well, that's a long drive for me. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, you're from San Diego. And I said, no, I'm actually about 10 minutes from you right now. I'm moving to Tennessee. Can I come by and talk to you? And he said, sure. So we go over to his house.
With all these trucks and the whole
Yeah, like a
caravan.
caravan. He's thinking, are you moving in or what are you doing?
You're right.
So, but I pull out of the truck a flag that we made, a patriotic family flag that just had his last name, the Udalls on it. And I gave it to him and he's like, why'd you do that? And I told him, I said, I remembered you said that you didn't have money for a flag like this for you, although you'd love one, but you had the money for your kids and you just wanted to focus on getting them a flag. Well, they've had a flag for a year and you haven't. So we're driving through. We're in Tennessee because of how you spoke about Tennessee. We chose this to be our new home state because of our conversation. So as a gift for that, as we're moving into Tennessee, we didn't want to drive by your house and then give it to you later. We wanted to do it on our way in before we even, I had never even seen our house.
Right.
So my wife had come out and seen it. So we gave it to Mr. Udall. About 4 hours later, we finally arrived to our house here and have been kind of living the dream. Well, at least it seemed for a while. So this is where the next part of the story starts. So we get to Tennessee. Everything is great for about 4 months. We get here in September. Then in January, September of 2020,
Right.
in January of 2021, now, keep in mind the timing of that. This is basically the same timing as right now. It was in between an election and an inauguration. So while Biden was not president yet, he was soon to be. And
Right.
so on January 7th, 2021, is when we were canceled. That's when I found out, you could look at all of our flow, everything. Everything got shut down on January 7th. Just all of our website traffic, our ads stopped being shown on Facebook. Um, so we went into a kind of a panic mode, like what in the world's going on?
Right.
You know, and at the time we didn't really understand it, although now looking back, we completely understand it. The Biden administration just coming in to get elected, they were they were greasing some parts over at Meta and Instagram and Facebook and all the social media platforms and all the entire media. And in part of that, it was to suppress opposing views and opposing political ideology. So
Right.
we got kind of caught up in that opposing part, and our ads weren't showing, and our business just started to fall apart. Finally, I figured out exactly what had happened. I wasn't given any notice. I had to go doing some digging and found out that Shopify, who we trusted to, when COVID happened and we had to build a cool website to sell, we chose Shopify, and
Right.
that was a huge mistake. They started taking down certain flags that we sell, some of our best sellers that they didn't agree with. So any 3%er stuff, any Second Amendment stuff, they just said, this goes against our usage policies. So, even though I had been doing it for 2 years before that, but suddenly
Yeah.
on January 7th, 2021, it's no longer allowed. So Facebook, similar against their community standards, they took down our. This is really what's telling about like the ideology. People say, "How do you know it's because you're conservative?" Okay, it's a fair question. The reason that I know it's because we're conservative is because they took down our Trump flag. They took down our Second Amendment flag. They took down our Christian flag. They took down our first responders flag, and they took down our military flags,
Wow.
all which happen to be highly conservative markets. I'm not saying that there are not Democrat,
Yeah.
progressives that are in those lines of work. Of course there are, but most of our customers are either in law enforcement or military, or were in law enforcement or military.
Right.
You take those flags out of our product list, you're taking more than half of our business away just with those. And then
Right.
then you go to the ultra patriotic people, the people that want the preamble,
Right.
in their home on a flag, the we the people, they want the whole preamble or the Pledge of Allegiance, or, a picture of George Washington crossing the Delaware, like these iconic pieces
Yeah.
of art, really, even though that, the Constitution isn't art, but the way that we lay it out, it is. And people want that to represent their home. So when you
Yes.
take all of those things off of our website and then you tell us that we're not allowed to advertise for those things, makes it real hard to run a business that was built on exactly those things in exactly that market.
Yeah.
Luckily, when for about 6 weeks, I did everything I could to try to figure out what the heck was going on. I even
Yeah. I mean, not to interrupt, but it's almost like imagine this, folks, those of you who are listening. You're running a business, everything's going amazing. And you're looking at your numbers online. There's a flow happening. You see what your best products are, you're selling, you're trying to make your customers happy. And then one day, it all just shuts off. Like the water in your house just shuts off. And you're like, and no one tells you why. No one tells you what's going on. You have to figure it out all on your own in this digital environment. And you're thinking, well, they wouldn't shut us down because we're conservatives. I mean, that's not America. That's ludicrous. And you find out that's exactly what it was. How did you find out specifically? Did you call up Shopify? Because I've used Shopify, and now that you're telling me this, I don't think I want to use Shopify anymore.
you know, um, here's the thing is that I've said that Meta, Shopify, some of the companies that canceled us, even PayPal, they have unbelievable products that can help, the little guy
Yeah,
build a great business that he can hand down to his kids. Unfortunately, they've weaponized them. I
yeah,
mean, it's just the truth. I mean, they can have, I mean, I'm not like above saying their platforms are very well done and they make
yeah.
it so
I
user
agree. I
friendly.
100% agree.
But when, a gun can be well made, most guns are. You don't want it pointed at you, and it's the same
Yeah.
thing with, with a website. So when we figured out, to answer your question, is the way that we really figured it out was that I just started seeing a slowdown in sales. So I attributed that to something going on with our marketing.
Say that again. You dropped out a bit.
I attributed that to something is going on with our marketing.
Right.
Either, something is going on, maybe a particular ad that we're doing is just not running well, or who knows. So I get
Right.
into the Meta business suite to start looking at the numbers and realize that our ads are not running anymore. Then I start looking and I I I see that list that they sent me. They did not alert me to the sending. I just went into each product and saw that it's been denied for advertising. It's been denied for advertising. This one, and I'm like, wait a minute, these are all of our best selling flags. What am I going to advertise? The stuff that we don't sell, you know?
Right. And by the way, you've been advertising this stuff for 2 years with no
Correct.
problem.
Correct. And then suddenly, the day after January 6th, January 7th, 2021, boom, all this happens. So for a month, I scramble, just try to figure out, okay, I can advertise somewhere
Mm.
else. Nope, no, you can't. Not only that, but when people found out at that point, cancel culture was pretty new. They'd heard about it. Keep in mind, President Trump was canceled. He was thrown off of Parlor originally,
Yeah.
um,
And then Twitter,
and then
they
Twitter and Facebook, like everything. He was completely deplatformed. So, because Trump was starting to get that kind of stuff, people really started understanding what cancel culture and shadow banning and all these different terms really started becoming part of our everyday vocabulary.
Right.
So so where where we go is that we we when we finally figured out that we were canceled, I called my aunt. I called everyone that I knew for advice, for help, for anything. My aunt happens to be a five-time Emmy award-winning director. We didn't put this in the book. Rob, was like, you really want to put something like, it's kind of family stuff. You might want not want to. You can talk about it as one thing, but you may not want to put it in print. And he
Yeah.
was right. So this really isn't in the book, but my aunt is a five-time or maybe even six-time Emmy award-winning director for a liberal news station. And I called her and asked her, "Hey, they're canceling the American flag. This is terrible. Can you get me on the news?" And she basically said, "No, you're a Trump supporter. It was damage my reputation to have my nephew, you know, of that mindset with all my colleagues." So that was probably the lowest point because I realized like this cancel culture thing is deep. Because
It
if
is.
you're being canceled and your own family won't help you, like this divide that we're talking about is not like, hey, my ads are suspended. It's like, hey, my family is split.
Right.
So, um, so that was a hard one. And for a couple days, I kind of just figured out how I was going to tell my wife that we're going to everything that we've gotten out of this business, we're going to lose it all. So, it's pretty dark days. And, but one night I was up here till about 10 o'clock or so and just got the nerve to do it. So I was going to head up to the house. My shop is about 100 yards away from our house. So got the nerve to go just tell my wife the bad news and everything. But on my way up there, about halfway, I realized that, I've talked to everybody. I've called everybody that I know for help, but I hadn't talked to God yet. So that's probably where probably the biggest mistake.
Yeah.
So I went up instead of telling Ginger that we were going to lose everything for the first time. And at that time, we were married for 16 years. Um, and we both pray and we're both Christian and,
Yeah.
but we don't pray together and we don't pray out loud. It's something just private. Sometimes even when we're laying in bed, we're both praying in bed, but we're just quiet about it. Um,
Right. I
but this time I was like, you need to first of all, when I got in the room, it was 10 o'clock and my wife was crying. She knew what was going on. She knew the weight of what was really going on. So I asked her to get out of bed and to pray with me. And while that just kind of scared her more, she also was comforted by it. So we said a prayer, and the prayer was very simple, that I didn't care if we lost everything. I didn't care what God had in store from me. I just needed to know that I was on the path that He wanted me on. And if this was it, okay, I just need to know that this is supposed to be happening, and I haven't messed up. And I just needed God's confirmation that I was where He wanted me to go. So in the prayer, I actually said, if you want us to go back to our old jobs, we'll go back to our old jobs. I'll go back to being a carpenter, you know, for hire. Ginger can go get a good thing about Trader Joe's is there's one 20 minutes from here. Uh,
right.
she'd go back to Trader Joe's. So, but if you want us to do that, great. Give me a sign. If you want us to stay in this business, just give me a sign. We both went to bed, and that was probably the first time that we slept well in about 6 weeks. We woke up in the morning to Newsmax calling me, saying that they saw a post of mine. I had no idea that anybody that I knew on that even was at Newsmax. So, but somehow it came across their feed, and they called and said, "Do you want to go on Rob Schmidt tonight and talk about your story?" We did. We did. It did unbelievable. And we got about 6 months worth of orders in that one night. So we were like, okay, now we got breathing room. I can figure all this stuff out in 6 months.
So let me get this straight. God sent you a message. Pretty
Pretty
much.
strong. Pretty
That's a
strong.
strong message. Wow.
Very. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it was 9 hours after the prayer, and it wasn't subtle. And here's even more to it is that in the prayer, said, I ended it with something like, I'll never question your path. I'll stay on your path until it ends. And then the producer who called me from Newsmax, when I told her the entire story and that, I was fired up, I wanted to like get legislation. This shouldn't be happening. This should be illegal. She
Right.
was like, James, I think that if you stay in this long enough, there's going to be all kinds of ins and outs and ups and downs in your story. And this is when it got me. She said, and I'm going to be here for you until your story ends. And when she said
Wow.
that, I was kind of like, oh my goodness, like this is the path. This is where the path begins, and this is where I'm going to be. So Newsmax has been a huge, huge part of our um, story, I guess, from the very beginning. Rob Schmidt broke the story. Then that got us a huge amount of sales. But the problem was the next morning after that, PayPal took all the money that we had in PayPal, plus all the money from the sales that were still coming in from the interview from last night. And they were just holding all the money. And at that point, it was like near $100,000. And they
Yeah.
basically said, we're holding the money for 180 days. And in 180 days, we'll let you know what we're going to do with it. Meanwhile, I've got 300 customers that want their flag, and I don't have the money to buy the material. I don't have the money to hire a few more carpenters. I don't have the money to buy the boxes, the tape, the pay for the ship. I don't have the money. They took the money.
Wow.
So that's where our cancel culture story really gets. That's when we thought it was bad. That's when it really got really bad because we have all the resources now, but now not only are they closing down the website, closing down our marketing, now they're closing down our bank and blocking us. So now they've taken away our store, they've taken away our marketing for our store, and they've taken away our banking for our store.
Yeah.
If you take those three things out of any business, it crumbles quickly.
It does. Folks, I want you to understand this. For those who may not know this, banking laws have a certain structure to them. And I know this because I have friends who work as diplomats in different governments all over the world. And one of the things you will see is when they review someone's application to become a citizen of, let's say, Canada, and the guy sitting in front of them doesn't look that bright, and he has $4 million in his bank account, they question that and they say, well, he seems to be part of this organization. We have to deny him and maybe freeze his bank accounts because he is a terrorist. He actually is. You can see it. But here in America, it seems like our own government has turned on us, and they are using the power that they yield in the banking industry, in the news media, and all these social media platforms. And in case you're rolling your eyes and saying, "Oh, come on, Brad," we just found out through congressional hearings that our government was pressuring Twitter the whole time to not put out or not allow conservative views to come to the forefront. And, James, the result of that is half our nation is repeating lies and misinformation and negative talking points that aren't true simply because they haven't heard the other side. Look at the January 6th hearings. That was a show trial because they didn't have any testimonials or testimony from anybody who was of an opposing view. That's not how the law works. I mean, how many episodes of CSI do you have to watch or Law and Order before you figure out how the law works? You know what I mean? You're supposed to have both sides giving their viewpoint, and they didn't do that. And so, getting back to now, you have a ray of sunshine through Newsmax, giving you this story that sheds light, and PayPal sits there and goes, well, you can't be trusted. We're gonna have to freeze your money, like you're some sort of mastermind and the head of Spectre. I mean, it's ludicrous that they are able to get away with this, and it's all because they're a digital banking platform, I guess. So,
Correct.
sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add some context for our listeners because there's certain things banks are allowed to do and certain things they're not allowed to do. And there
Yep.
was no reason for them to freeze your account except for some arbitrary made up rule that they decided to bend for you. So let's move on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So this is where the business model kind of comes in. When so the way that I found out that PayPal had done this was that um, I put in an order for wood based on the new, orders slowed down. I could get my head around how much I was going to need, down to how many screws I was going to need, how much paint,
Right, right.
there's a lot involved in making the flag. So I got all that, called our supplier. He ran the card and said, "Hey, James, your card isn't working." I said, "No, that's not right. There's money in there." So he ran it again, tried 3 times. I call PayPal up and they say, "I realize nothing is going to happen." They basically say, "Your account's frozen. I can't really see why." So I get my wife involved. She's much more calm about this kind of stuff than I am.
Yeah.
So she gets on the phone with them and talks to a guy named Scotty. What Scotty ends up telling my wife was that um, I heard my wife getting upset from the other office space. So I walked into her thing. She's got it on speaker. And she says, "So why exactly are you holding our money? You haven't given us any reason. Like, what did we do?" And Scotty says, um, "Well, we've looked into your business, and because you don't have your product made before you sell it, it's a shady business model. And because of that, we don't think you're going to be in business very long. So we're holding this money." And I said, "But we've been in business for like 3 years. We've never had any problems. We don't have returns. We've had this kind of a workload before. You can see it. What's the problem? Like when we go to, like, say, the rodeo final,
Yeah.
in a few days, you get a bunch of sales. You get a huge spike. Totally normal. In our business model, when we go to a big show, we get a ton, $20,000 worth
Yeah.
of sales in a day or two. So this was not out of the norm for us to go on a TV show and see a big spike in sales.
Exactly.
So there was really no reason for them to do it. Now they did do it. 6 months came and went, no luck. I got on the news when I called Newsmax and said, "Hey, look, thank you for thank you for getting me on the news." But now more big tech companies are kind of piling on. They're going after they're coming after me now too. So they put me on the news and I got to, kind of keep their audience aware of what was going on. And, if I calculated the amount of emails that I got from people saying they quit PayPal because of our story, I mean, we're talking thousands, maybe
Wow.
even over 10,000. So
Wow.
I know that every time we go on the news, somebody out there quits. So that kind of became my way to pressure them. While I was doing that, turns out my cousin, Harmeet Dillon, was one day watching and saw one of the programs that I was on. It just so happened to be that my wife's cousin has a colleague who is a colleague of Harmeet Dillon, and that my wife's cousin had reached out through his channels to Harmeet, and then so Harmeet kind of knows our story and then sees us on TV. So she
Mm-hmm.
reaches out to
Mm-hmm.
us and says, "Look, I've looked into your story, saw the news clips. Um, you get back to making flags. I'm gonna go get you your money back."
Oh,
And
yes.
then right away, I think like within a day, we had PayPal gave us $25,000 back. But that hardly covered. That doesn't even cover the cost to make the flags.
Right.
So we need like half of our money back. At this point, it's like $120,000. I need like half of that to get my carpenters back in here because this has now been 6 months. Nobody's working here. I've had to let the entire staff go. Everyone's gone and
Wow.
has other jobs. How am I going to get them back? I can't train people. So I need more money. And
Yeah.
Nope, they won't give it to us. So, but Harmeet got 25,000 right away, and then I think another 25,000 within a few weeks. So we were up and running again.
Right.
Now, the problem with it was that to do good business, what it would have been nice if I had all my money, because then I could have uh, bought all my wood at one time, paid one delivery fee, and not only that, but when you buy that much, not only do you save a couple dollars a board foot,
Right.
but when you're buying 1,000 board feet, so a couple dollars a board feet, that's a couple $1,000 in savings. They don't even charge you for the delivery when you're doing an order that big, which is $500.
Wow.
So I'm saving three, four, $5,000 by ordering it all at one time. But because PayPal only said, no, we're only going to give you this amount and this amount and this amount, I could never make the order for all of everything I need. I had to be buy part of the wood and part of the screws and part of the paint and part of the shipping and part everything was done in little tiny increments when it would have been done much quicker and faster. Meanwhile, because they're doing this, we are back up and running, but we're doing all of our business how PayPal is dictating to us. We do it. We're not allowed to go out there and make decisions for ourselves and say, look, I need 8 carpenters for the next 2 weeks. I need 5 people boxing up flags for us. I couldn't do that because I'm limited on my budget. So, okay, I can only have a total of 4 people here. So one guy's boxing, one guy's cutting all the parts and making the parts, 2 guys are assembling. But that it should have been 3 guys making the parts, 5 guys assembling, and 4 guys boxing up. And we would have had flags leaving the shop every single day. But
Right.
what PayPal did to us was make it to where we had to do business their way, not the right way, but they dictated to us how we could afford to do our business, even though that our performance in sales showed that we didn't need anybody helping us. We were doing good, and had people just stayed out of the way, we would have been able to do that. As a result, what happened was the orders that we took us almost a year to get out.
Oh
Almost
my
a
God.
year. Wow. Because we had to build them in sections, about 5 different sections, rather than just building them all at one time and getting them all out in a couple months. We'd have to build start to finish a group, get them done in, for a couple months, and then they'd give us more money. And then, so it was just an absolute mess to have to do business with PayPal. I would never recommend PayPal. All of these companies, if you're not getting any traction, they don't bother you because you're not getting
Right.
any traction. There's no reach. Nobody's hearing you. But if you have a
Right.
message that they don't like and you don't have traction, they don't care about you. As soon as you get traction and people are going to be hearing the message that they don't like,
Yeah.
that's when they cut you off. They'll take away your advertising. They'll demonetize you. They'll platform you. They'll debank you. They have all kinds of, with all of the tech tools, the platforms, the apps that big tech owns and runs and in a way deploys, they can turn all those things against the people that they don't like. And in the recent history, that they have a very, very clear pattern of choosing exclusively conservatives. And here's a good
Yes.
example of that. PayPal. We don't even have to go away from the people we're talking about. PayPal, about 6 months after they canceled our money or took our money for reasons that they just said that we have a shady business model without really explaining what that meant. 6 months later, they get caught red-handed fining their members for saying things on social media that they deem to be disinformation or misinformation. They'll fine you. They'll take 2,500. Keep in mind, PayPal is not a social media platform. They're a payment
Right.
processing platform. That's all that they are. But yet now, how is it that their bots are reading your social media posts? And
Right.
then how can they put that post into context and then somehow, because of something you said on Facebook, PayPal is taking $2,500 out of your account? They got caught red-handed in that. I think that I forgot what their what the policy was called, but I have an article I can send you for the
That'd be
show.
great.
It's
Uh,
PayPal is not your pal.
well, what scares me is we have an entire generation that's been indoctrinated into, the First Amendment is, sort of iffy. You can cancel what you don't like. And it's like, no, that's not what it's about. It's about everybody gets to talk, even if you don't like the message. And this,
Especially when you don't like the message.
yes, especially when you don't like the message. And they want to label something hate speech, or they want to say, oh, that's just evil, or that's racist, or whatever, and it's not. And so it becomes this arbitrary, we make up the rules when we feel like it. And when we when we see a government and all the cascades that come down from that, the corporate, elite, the oligarchs, whatever, when they start to tell you they don't want to hear this message, what they're telling you loud and clear, if you don't understand, is that they fear the message, because the message pulls the country away from their secret agenda. And their agenda, if you haven't figured out what it is, it's not what they say, it's what they do and the results of what they do that shows you definitively what their agenda is. And that is to shut up the original founding fathers' message and the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They don't want to live by that anymore. And the greatest part about America, James, and I've always loved this, is, as a conservative, if somebody did something you didn't like, you wouldn't cancel them. You just say, I wouldn't do that. But you have the freedom to do it because that's what America is. As long as your freedom ends where mine begins, we're fine. Okay. It's when you encroach onto my freedoms that we have a problem. And now we have, and I truly believe it's a very small percentage of this country wants to tell everybody else what to do. It's like vegans, and I don't mean to pick on vegans. I know some wonderful vegans. They always have to tell you they're a vegan. And what do you do when you have a vegan friend? Seven people are going out to dinner, and the one is a vegan, and all six of you have to find a restaurant that makes that one person happy.
Yeah.
This is what we've done for years. We've tried to make them happy. This other side, and they're never happy. It's all I can say. So let's continue. This is fascinating. Uh, I'm just blown away that you and your wife, through prayer, were able to survive through this, because we all do it, folks. We pray individually in our own households, but when do we pray as a family? When do we sit down and do a spiritual moment, where you connect with God, Jesus, read the Bible, things like that? I heard a great phrase years ago. Most Bibles are open prominently in the home, but if you went up and went like that, dust would fly off it. And I admire you for, sitting down, kneeling down, and taking that moment to congress with God, to communicate, to, especially when times are tough. We forget to do it when times are good, but it's an ongoing relationship. So I love that. Please continue. Let's keep going on this.
So so basically where we're at now is PayPal has our money. We're in a bad situation. Our meet Dylan has come into the picture, which is really cool because I'm sure you know, Harmeet just got tasked by President Trump to join his administration and go after cancel culture, which I think is just
Yeah.
like, it's just, I get to kind of sit back, distance, and now our meat's going to get justice for us. So um, what happens next is that we literally just struggle. I mean, Harmeet started getting our money back, but doing business at that time, we weren't allowed to do it the right way. So we were having to reinvent. Now, keep in mind, we were doing the rodeo circuit. COVID hits, we have to reinvent ourselves. We figure it out. We
Right.
go online. We come back stronger. We get in a good stride again, and then this all happens. And now we have PayPal telling us, okay, no, this is how you're going to do business. Like, here, we're going to give you this amount of money. So every time that we have had something happen to where it's going good, all the rules change on us. Something
Right.
happens to where we have to completely figure out a new way to do this. So that's more or less where we were at this point. And it, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it sucked. It was the more work, those few months of easy 60-hour weeks, those are gone. We're going to be going, 100-hour weeks until we can get our business back, or we give up. I go back to my old job. She goes back to her old job, and we just give this American dream up. And, it is what it is. Neither one of us want to do that. So, um, we,
That's a true entrepreneur, by the way.
yeah, just
And
keep on
it's
pressing
hard to
forward.
work with family. I mean, you have a wife Ginger and your children Max and Evie. You're the patriarch of the family holding this glue together. And a true entrepreneur just doesn't give up. So I admire you for that.
No,
Um,
we didn't have a choice. It was either see my kids see me as a failure or just keep on fighting. So my wife and I chose to keep on fighting. And every once in a while we go on the news and we give people updates on, what's going on. And eventually I kind of started thinking that we were at the end of the road. God was going to take care of us till the end of the road. But I was thinking, okay, I guess the path is ending. And then we get a call from our local state representative, Monty Fritz, and he's has a mutual friend and has seen us on the news and is aware of what's going on. He's not elected yet, um, but he says if I get elected, I'm gonna solve this in Tennessee. We're gonna solve this once and for all. This should never happen to anybody.
right.
So about 5 months after that, he gets elected, and sure enough, he has me come testify to Congress, the state legislature, the Tennessee Congress. And when I was doing that, the day that I showed up, I took my kids because I wanted the representatives to see, the kids that during this whole thing when PayPal was holding our money, like my kids stopped going to doctor's appointments. My daughters fell way behind on orthodontist. My son still hasn't got the braces that he needs because we've never fully recovered. So we're pushing off doctor's appointments. My wife is now rationing food because we just don't have money for 3 meals a day right now. So she's
Right.
now rationing food. My kids are going to school with half of a lunch, not a full lunch. Um, my it was awful. My kids are literally going to bed hungry and they understand something is going on, but don't completely understand. And they just
Right.
never say anything to us. Eventually, I went and asked my son, and he was just upset one night. I asked him what's wrong in bed, and he's, I'm just hungry. And mommy, I know mommy didn't have enough to make, and I was just like, oh God, we've got $100,000 sitting in a bank, and my kids are literally going to bed hungry. that's
Yeah.
that's where we're at. That's a pretty maddening position to be in. So the morning I get to the Tennessee legislature to testify, the night before everything is great. Congressman Fritz or Representative Fritz is saying we got the votes. We should be an easy vote. We're all good. See you in the morning. Be in Nashville at this time, and you're going to testify. You're going to have about 5 minutes to address Congress. So
Right.
we go up there. Right when I walk in there, he's shaking his head and he said, James, I'm really sorry. We just don't have the votes. Um, PayPal sent a bunch of lobbyists here yesterday, and they swung a lot of people back the other way. So we just don't have the votes today. I don't even want to call it up for a vote because I don't want to lose it. I'd rather push it off. And I said, all right. So what am I going to do? And he's like, well, I still want you to testify because I want them, when I go talk to them, I want them to have a face so they know you and your kids. So we ended up testifying, and PayPal was also going to be testifying that day. Halfway through my testimony, uh, the lobbyist from PayPal got up and started to walk out of the chamber, and a Democrat called them back in and said, hey, wait a minute. What he's saying is not what you guys told. I've got some questions for you based on his testimony. And the chairman said that they were there voluntarily, that they were not subpoenaed, and they do not have to testify if they want, but if they did, they were going to have to answer questions. So they turned around and walked out, and we've not seen them back in Nashville since then. But that was a turning point. After my testimony, they really saw it. Representative Towns from Memphis, a Democrat, actually said that he wanted to see more teeth in the bill, that people who do this to small businesses should be fined. It should be an
Yeah.
automatic 3 times the amount. And, you know, that should just be a rule. So
Yeah.
this February, they're going to be voting on it again with those teeth.
Yeah, I feel sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it's this is beyond communism. This is corporatism, where corporations are treating us like dirt.
Mhm.
Not there's no humanity in what they're doing. And case in point, they didn't anticipate you would show up to testify at the Senate hearing. You know, you were just they didn't anticipate that. They, in other words, they lied about you so that they could get their way, their corporate way. They're a bank, not a social media company, nor a publishing company, or any of that. Yes, I could see them monitoring. All of a sudden, somebody's making $1 million and they're selling something, you know, in a plastic bag with white powder.
Yeah,
You guys are
yeah,
doing.
hold that money.
Yeah, and by the way, if you want to talk about, well, you know, we have to hold your money because you don't actually create the orders until you get paid and blah blah blah. I'm a graphic designer. Imagine if I never got paid until I finished the work, which can take months.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is they don't understand your business model, but bull. The bottom line is they just made up an arbitrary rule.
Yep.
So continue on. So they're going to vote in February. Let's hope it goes in your favor. Let's hope
If
this
not, we'll be
law.
back the next year. It's just, it's legislation is slow, and I'm learning that. And you just have to be persistent. And as long as
Yeah,
we stay in the news and we can keep that pressure on, eventually these changes are inevitable.
yeah.
It's just how long can these big tech companies? You got to understand is that if they are fighting them so hard, how much it's not principle that they're fighting, it's profit that they're fighting for. So how much money are they making? So here's another thing that Representative Towns did that was probably the best thing that came out of that session, was that based on my testimony, he was very curious and wanted to open up a congressional inquiry, which we should be getting the results pretty soon, about how many times PayPal has done this, how much money that they've held collectively, how long they held it for, and most importantly, how much money did they make off holding other people's money? Now, when
Th-
Congress
yeah,
gets that, that's a game.
yeah.
That's lights out for PayPal, I think.
Well, for the rest of us who may not know this, this is stealing, basically. Let's
Yeah.
just call it what it is, especially if you're a legitimate business. And second, banks float money. Uh, Floating money means, you know, let's say your credit card bill, you know, the you owe 3 grand or whatever, or they will take that money, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but they'll put it in an account with 100,000 other people who paid 3 grand, and that money sits there for a month, and they get interest on it. And so they're getting interest on your money, and it's illegal. This makes no sense to me, but it's illegal for you to demand the interest payment plus the money they owe you.
Yeah.
And that should change as well. They should be penalized for some of the things that they do to the small business owner. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, it's a gray area that I think as the internet has allowed these entry level entrepreneurs to take their swing at the American dream. I think that it's there's a gray area there. It's a new it's relatively new, 20 years old or so, and I think that man, if there's anybody who could figure out how to legislate that, or at least get the rough framework for that type of entrepreneurial movement, it would be President Trump. I mean, he would
Yeah.
be the guy that knows how to, give the little guy a little bit what he needs to, grease his wheels a little bit to get going, and then, crack down a little bit later on. But
James, you're tremendous. Everything you do is tremendous.
yeah, yeah, I'd love to hear that from him.
They
But
shot me. They shot me, but I survived.
keep on.
Um, I think, I wanted to describe to people what a liberal was, and the best one I can remember is there's a movie. I'll remember it later, but Jack Nicholson is a romance novelist in the movie. I think it's as good as it gets, or something like that. Um, and the secretary admires his work at the publishing house, and he comes in and he says something to his agent, and he goes to walk out, and the secretary goes, "Oh, oh, you write women so well. How do you write your
Oh yeah,
women characters?" And he looks and he goes, "I think of a man, and then I take out reason and logic."
yeah, and I think
And it was
accountability. I think he says accountability
and
too.
accountability. I take out reason and accountability. And I was like,
Yeah,
that is the liberal left.
yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
totally is. Yeah, that
So,
I think that's probably one of the things that. So really, I think what's interesting is this time today that we're living in, because if I look back, um, in between, again, what I mentioned earlier, that weird time between an election and an inauguration, I didn't see it at the time, but all of the social media, the liberal machine was gearing up to do what they have done the last 4 years.
right.
And the first wave was January 7th, 2021, when, I mean, my story is one of probably hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg didn't sit at Meta and going, "Hey, go that flag guy, go get him." That
Yeah.
never happened. Some programmer made a algorithm that targeted Trump, anything with Trump in it, because keep in mind, January 6th was the supposed insurrection, and we all know it
Yeah.
wasn't, but the supposed insurrection.
Yep.
January 7th is when all of this happened. So social media and media at large was hypersensitive to anything pro Trump, because they had started their campaign to paint him as an insurrectionist. So anything
Exactly.
positive celebrating him was going to be suppressed. That's really, and now keep in mind, Joe Biden has not been inaugurated yet. This is January 7th.
Right.
In that gray area between the election and the inauguration is when all of the power players in big tech said, okay, let's get this machine working. And that's what we got caught up in. Ironic, or not ironically, but what's happening today is what we're seeing. We're in that same place, that
Yeah.
6 week window where we're in between the election and the inauguration, and this time I can already see there's movement going back. That pendulum has already begun to swung. I mean, or we didn't get in November. I think we had 4 sales all of November. This by
Right.
far, the last year was by far the slowest, worst year that we've ever had. Not even close. Patriotism. When now trying to put all this context in there about how important Trump is. In 2018, we started the business. That's 2 years into the Trump administration. We saw how everyone was wearing patriotism like a badge of honor. And people
Yeah.
wanted to buy things to put in their home to show that love of country. So we happened to get into this flag making business right at the right time.
Right.
And Trump is, we had a year of solid Trump before COVID hit. And still after COVID, I'll take Trump during COVID over Biden anytime.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing now is like how in 2 years we built a business from a 6-year-old boy's idea and a $50 gift card. We built that up to buy our first home, move across country, move our business across country, and live the American dream. Within 21 days, or no, 23 days of Biden getting elected, our business was canceled. I mean, if
Yeah.
you just put that on, like, 2 years of absolute growth under every circumstances, everything bad, a pandemic, everything growing. Joe Biden comes in, we're canceled. And for the last 4 years, we've been struggling to recover. We still haven't even come anywhere close to recovering to what we were doing before we were canceled. Now,
Yeah.
Trump is coming back in, and we're already seeing organic purchases. We're already seeing people wanting to get back into patriotism. And I think that people are seeing that they can be a little bit less thrifty with their wallets because we're on to better days. Gas is going to come down, foods are going to come down,
Yeah.
everything. I mean, what I told my wife was that, look, when Trump came in last time, what we had was a big fat unknown. We had no clue what was going to happen. We just had a whole bunch of hope.
Yeah.
Trump
Right.
came in with half the people in his cabinet were working against him. They weren't working with him. He didn't really know
Yeah.
what he was doing. He was trusting all the wrong people. And he was coming in ill prepared, even though probably unbelievably prepared as he could be, but he didn't understand how nasty Washington really was.
No.
Then he gets the election taken from him, stolen, whatever, or he lost the election, whatever. And then for the last 4 years, he got to really think about the mistakes that he made with his first administration, bringing in the wrong kind of people, not bringing in the right kind of people, how much more he could have done. And then what he can do if he was elected and came in and didn't spend 2 years learning the ropes,
Right.
have a pandemic. He's coming in, learning the ropes, putting in people in place that are not going, they're going to be unshakable people that are not, they understand. So
Right.
I'm thinking we kind of have a looking glass into the future. We're at a very unique place and time right now, I believe, to where if you could, what investments and what would you do with your money if you could go back to 2016, right before Trump went into office? Would you do things differently with your money? Probably would. What
Yes.
you
Big
know.
time. Yeah.
I think that you should be looking at the next 4 years similarly. We know what's going to happen, except it's probably going to be better because not only does he know what he's doing, not only is he bringing in people that are going to do it, the last time he had the world against him, the world wants him this time. So not, I mean, he has the Japanese prime minister giving $100 billion
Yes.
to invest into our economy. And then on the podium, he's telling them, let's make it two. Let's make it two. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy is going to, it's a good time in our country, as bad as things have been the last 4 years. And I can show you my spreadsheets that will absolutely prove patriotism has been on a decline for the last 4 years. And in a couple of weeks, and I think if you really honed it down onto the election day, overnight, patriotism is back on the rise. And for the next four
It
years,
is.
all of us have a unique opportunity to kind of look forward into that looking glass that we've already seen what Trump can do and make some plans and fully capitalize on the next 4 years.
God bless you, brother. You from your lips to God's ears, my friend. Where do we go to order our own customized American flag? Where do we go?
You can go to youramericanflagstore.com. We do give gift cards out with the picture of the flag. So when you give it to the person, they know what they're given.
That's
But
that's awesome.
youramericanflagstore.com.
I love it. As a young Boy Scout, I approve this message.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being on Awakened Nation, and for Rob Ansbach for introducing us. Your
Absolutely.
story is part of what's going on in America, and you know that these companies are scared now. You know, I've watched them pull back their DEI, programs and change everything, and now they've deleted all this rhetoric that they've put up
Mhm.
over the years, and it's like I'm thinking to myself, what? Why are you removing it? I mean, how far were you going to push it if the other side had won this election? How much further were you going to beat this over our heads? And that's the difference between a conservative and a Democrat on the left. We don't try to change you. We don't try to
Well,
force our message onto you.
how about if it's right? If what you're doing is right, why would you ever need to delete it?
Yeah,
If you're
exactly.
deleting it, you know it's wrong, or it can be used against you or something. If it
Yeah.
was right, solidly right, there's no way you would delete it. It would exonerate you.
God bless you, man. Thank you for being on the show. James Staake, please reach out to him, Your American Flag. It's a youramericanflagstore.com.
Mhm.
Excellent. Go order, uh, show your patriotism. Go order a flag. We're going to order one as well here at this household. Um, I'm not going to let you go just yet. I always ask a lightning round of questions
Okay,
for you so that our audience can get to know our guests better. Are you ready?
sure.
Okay. My first question is, out of everything you've been through, your family, life, your love of God, what is your favorite memory?
Um, that's tough. Uh, Probably my son Max. Um, when we were in Vegas, there was a couple that came by our booth and to buy a flag, and he couldn't close them. He was 6 years old, and he couldn't close them. But they said, "Ah, well, we might be back." But I tell them, they're probably not going to come back. So he got used to that, but he couldn't close them and they walked away. We went out in on the strip that night and we ate dinner at I forgot where, but it was at one of the I think it was Outback on the strip.
Yeah,
And we're sitting there and Max says, "Daddy, give me a business card." And I pull out a business card. Why? And he's all, "There's that couple across," and he's pointing all the way across the entire restaurant. "There's that couple that didn't buy a flag today." And I said, "Okay, what are you going to do?" And he's like, "I'm going to go tell them that, if they come back tomorrow, I'm going to give them, free shipping or something like that." So I say, "All right." So I hand him a business card. He walks over there and the couple, and he ends up sitting there. They hadn't gotten their food yet. So he wasn't interrupting them eating really. Um, but he came back and he's like, "Yeah, they're going to be there in the morning." And sure enough, we got at the booth. They beat us to the booth that next morning and they bought a flag.
I have to introduce your son. You have to introduce your son to Ben Gay the third because he has the group, the National Sales Association
Mhm.
of top salespeople, and your
Mhm.
son will become an honorary member because this story.
Yeah,
This is he's a close. If Ben, you're listening to this, Max is a closer. Just want to let you know that it won't give up.
he is.
I,
He tells me all the time, "When are you going to get me in?" He thinks that I can just call President Trump up. He's like, "When are you going to get President Trump on the phone for me?" He wants to tell
that's funny.
Trump what's happened because we made a Trump flag and that all this has happened because we love him, we support Trump and stuff. And
Yeah.
my son wants to know. He wants to ask President Trump, what are you going to do about it? These people have put our family through heck, and what are you going to do about it? So
That's funny.
he's a he's a machine.
I love what you're doing, Max. It's tremendous.
It is.
He's a good kid. I love him. My second question is there anything we should know about you that you love to do that we don't know that you do?
uh I pretty much put everything out there. I love to just build stuff. I mean,
Oh,
that's
wow.
really it. I think my father-in-law just passed away recently, and what he always told me was that I work too much. He loved my work ethic. That's one of the reasons that he trusted me to um, with his daughter. But he asked me in the last several months. Actually, he asked me for 20 years, but the last several months he was alive, he asked me specifically to make sure that I spent more time with my family. So navigating this whole cancel culture thing has really kind of made me obsessed with it and winning and getting my legislation so that other people don't have to go through what we did. And I have, um, he died about 6 months ago or about 8 months ago now. So what I'm really trying to do is wrap all of this stuff up to where I can actually spend that time that he asked me to spend with my family. That's probably it. Most people that know me know that I work, you know,
Yeah.
18 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week. And if they were to hear me say, "No, I'm going to start taking a few weeks off here and there and just spend it with my family," all of them would say, "I'll believe it when I see it." So I think if there was something that people don't know about me, is that that is an effort that I'm trying to make happen.
Maybe I can help you with that because I remember in my 20s, I never wanted to travel. I was workaholic, and I'd take a weekend, maybe hop on a motorcycle and go somewhere, but I didn't value that. I didn't value it at all. And then I got to a certain age where I was just like, I love to travel. I love to have new experiences. And especially with my fiance, I like to see her experience with things maybe I grew up with. And with kids, it's funny. I've raised three stepkids. It's amazing what they remember in their mind of the time you spent with them. Uh, because my nephew, who I helped raise, Sebastian, he doesn't remember all the wonderful moments where I planned something great. He remembers that day we went to the Macy's Day Parade on Thanksgiving Day. It was unusually hot. And we get there, and because it was so crowded, he couldn't see the parade. So I took him to where they disassembled the balloons. So all the balloons are lined up. He's like 10 years old. He's on my shoulders. That he remembers. And he loved it so much. I was disappointed he couldn't see the parade. He said, "No, no, Uncle Brad, all the balloons were right there." I didn't have to wait
Yeah.
and watch the whole parade. It's amazing what they remember. Max and Evie are gonna remember those times when you were making flags together as a family, and you cracked a joke and you laughed, or family stuff. So uh, good luck with with trying to actually take moments and stop working. But get an egg timer. That always helps. Ding when it goes off. Leave the workshop.
Yeah, we got a fifth wheel so that um, we're gonna one of the things that we're gonna try to do is get back to our roots, a happy compromise, to where just like we were traveling around the country as a family, one of the best times that we ever got to spend as a family in the beginning part of the business, traveling around to rodeos and
Yeah.
concerts and stuff. Well, before we did it in a tundra and would sleep in tents, my kids would sleep in the table underneath the booth on sleeping bags, and people would be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we saw kids earlier. Where are they at now?" We're like, "Oh, they're sleeping underneath the table right here."
Yeah.
But this next time we'll do it a little bit night. We'll have a better experience in a nice RV that we can all kind of go around
Awesome.
and do a little bit slower and not have to, make a 20-hour drive, 18 hours.
Hey,
Otherwise,
enjoy
things are going
the
to fall apart. Yeah, we had too many of those types of times, but
and
um,
enjoy the ride, my
definitely looking
friend.
forward to it.
My last question for you is, what is your greatest hope for America's future?
Um, the hope would be that this the poison that we really have in our society now with believing this quasi Marxism, uh, overdrive propaganda producing media. I hope that people wake up to see really what's been going on the last 20 or 30 years and trying to use scare tactics and politics and not they're trying to get us to think things that are not true, and keeping us divided has
Yeah.
really served them well. I think our country would benefit the most is if we woke up. And I have a lot of hope. I have a cousin who has was raised by insane liberals. They're all crazy, think you can have an abortion right up until, birth, and it's still just a
Yeah.
clump of cells. Like, once it hits the air, it becomes a life. I don't know what they think.
Yeah.
But she called me this past election, and she and I have been talking, 20 years. She and I have never had a bad word to each other. We totally disagree on things, but over the last 20 years she's really come around, especially the last 5, because she became a mother of 2, and she starts seeing milk and gas and bacon and eggs and everything she needs to feed those
Yep.
babies is skyrocketing. And at one point, when she needed formula, there wasn't formula, and Joe Biden was in the office.
Yeah.
So she's woken up to it. And I think that there's a lot of young people. My cousin I'm talking about is 10 years younger than me, 12 years younger than me. But I think that younger 40 and under group people is either completely and totally brainwashed, and there's just nothing we can do. But I think there's a lot of those fair-minded people that are going, you know what? they told us all these things were going to happen if Trump was president. They never happened. War and inflation,
Yeah,
all this stuff. Then
exactly.
Biden comes in, and then all of that stuff happens, and then they try to blame it. Oh no, this is the ramifications of what Trump did. It would have been worse if it always would. If you liberals have this pattern of saying this terrible thing is going to happen unless you do this,
Right.
then we do this, it's still terrible. And then they say, well, just imagine what it would have been if we wouldn't have done that. Well,
Right.
maybe it wouldn't have been at all. Like maybe we
Right.
caused it.
I believe, when I lived in New York City for 35 years, Chuck Schumer and the ilk like that. And I don't want to make this too political, but it seems like they want to keep the problems rolling so that they have something to do. And Trump and most conservatives used to be like this. They're more pragmatists. They come in, they see a problem, they solve it. And, I've noticed that our politicians have milked problems for 30, 40, 50 years. You get to a certain age, I'm in my 60s, and I sit here and I look back and I go, they don't want to fix anything. They want to keep the problems going because the money rolls in. And we're at the receiving end of this now, and we're tired of it. And I hope that anybody who is on the left leaning will wake up someday and realize being a conservative is based on logic and family based choices. You don't have to be a Christian necessarily. You don't have to be, one of these people who just, you're hardcore about it. It's live and let live. My freedom ends where yours begins, but it's also my job to defend your freedom to do as you wish, as
True.
long as it doesn't encroach on the other people. And it's based on logic, sound logic. And I still have friends who are on the left, and I love them dearly. We don't have arguments or disagreements. We just disagree about one thing, and that's Donald Trump. And they still think that January 6th was an insurrection, an actual insurrection. um, and they still somehow believe that everything Trump's been accused of, but they can't make any of the stuff stick. They keep looking at Trump as the problem when everything they've accused Trump of doing, they're actually doing.
Yes.
And it's as if they just have this cognizant dissonance where they cannot turn around and look at themselves in the mirror and realize everything they are doing, they're pointing at Trump and saying he's the one who's doing it. They're like a really brilliant magician who
Mm.
has a beautiful, assistant, and you're looking at the beautiful assistant. For them, it's Trump. Trump is the beautiful assistant they can blame for everything.
Yep.
And when you wake up to logic, and I look at, family members like your cousin who turn around one day and wake up and go, wait a minute, I'm a mother now. My position on abortion has changed. My position on what's going on has changed. I see the prices going up. Maybe I shouldn't be a Democrat anymore. It's sort of, and I feel like in a logical world, Democrats shouldn't exist. Not at least not in the way they are today. John F. Kennedy, a Democrat from, the 60s who was assassinated, wouldn't be considered a Democrat by today's standards in any way, shape, or form. He's too
I, I,
conservative.
w- I wish Democrats were like him today. That would be great.
I agree. I agree. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I also want you to reach out and pick up James's book, Uncancelled, which Rob Anspach helped put together. It's the story that he just laid out for us today with all the deeper details about him and his family struggling to survive during cancel culture that we had in America. But James, I hear you're also doing a documentary as well. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the documentary is goes in. It takes the book that Rob did with me, and Rob is great, by the way. I was so nervous to have my life kind of play out in a book, but
Right, right.
Rob is a great coach and a great writer. Made it easy. The documentary goes a little bit more into the book really goes back 30 years about how they were grooming conservatives to keep their mouth shut and to just kind of accept and to conform into the liberal thing in high schools.
Yeah.
And I give a bunch of examples about that in the book. What the documentary really does is just stick to just our business, and really goes through like what Ginger and I were feeling when we built it and how proud we were of our kids for traveling around the country and going through. I mean, it was a really rough couple years for the kids, and they
Yeah.
handled like, I mean, they just enjoyed the whole part of it. So, and then to see all that happiness get rewarded with the American dream, and then to have it all taken away, the documentary really goes into what happened, the collateral damage of cancel culture. Most people think the cancel culture is, something happens to companies and they just weather the storm or whatever.
Right.
But a company is owned by a family somewhere, and a small family business is
Yeah.
usually owned by a small family.
Yeah.
And what happens to that small family when that small family business gets attacked by three of the biggest companies in the world? That's what the documentary is going to it's going to expose Facebook, Shopify, and especially PayPal in a way that they really don't want getting out there.
I love this because it does have to be exposed. Whenever I hear somebody say, these business owners, they're evil and all this, and it's like, did you know that probably 70 to 80% of the small businesses that you're talking about are the pizza parlor owner down the street from you who helped fund the baseball team, the local, midget league baseball team. Do you
Mm-hmm.
know that it's the printing presses that are running late at night down the block? That's the small business owner that you're complaining about, who contributes to your local, community. We're not talking about the big brands. I know that you want to go after the big brands who don't, contribute to any communities. But the reality is, what you're talking about is the destruction of what makes America great, and that's entrepreneurialism.
Yep.
Do you know in Germany, to start a business, it takes you a minimum of 18 months to prove your point to the government before they give you, your number and your license and your name. 18, imagine 18 months of not being able
That's
to.
crazy.
It's insane. So in America, you can literally go down to the county clerk, register your business, and you're done.
You're in business. Yeah.
Exactly.
And today you don't even have to go to the county clerk. You can do it online. Usually you can do
I
it
know.
right from your keyboard.
Yeah.
Um, one thing that I think is important I push this, I said it in my speech to Congress, is that the reason that it's so important for these big tech companies to get out of business and stop putting their
Mhm.
thumb on the scale is because, one, entrepreneurship is a part of one of the building blocks of our culture, of our society. And a lot of people do know this, that about 60%, sometimes even up to 70% of businesses that start up go out of business in the best of circumstances. In the best of circumstances, 70% of them aren't going to make it.
Right.
So when when you've made it, and then you get these PayPal and Facebook start put their thumb on it, on the scale, to where it does. I mean, how it's already hard enough. So when these companies put their thumb on the scale and make it harder for us, and then these businesses fall apart, what most people don't know is that about 60% of the businesses that are owned by a family, when that business goes out of business, the family ends up in a divorce about 60% of the time.
Wow.
So that makes it, when these big tech companies are going after these small family businesses, it's not an attack. Don't look at it as an attack on the business. Look at it as an attack on the American family, that institution, because that's
Yeah.
exactly what's happening. And if people, that's why we wanted to do a documentary, so people could really see, like, my wife having to ration food out. Like, that's a pretty harsh thing to any mother that's ever had to do that. Man, my heart goes out to them. And
Yeah.
to have a company forcing a mom to do that, when that company is holding $100,000 of their money,
Yeah.
is just absolutely nuts. That's legal, that it's acceptable. So the documentary is really about just really exposing what the family goes through when a
Right.
family business is targeted by cancel culture.
Uh, like I said, God bless you, man. I
Thank you.
know that, in the book of Job, God puts Job through hell so that Job can be a beacon for people to understand what you need to go through to get back to that relationship with God and listen. And thank you for your strength, your tenacity, your love of Christ, and just your family values, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all that. It's really nice to hear.
Ladies and gentlemen, James Staake, and a wonderful story, amazing story. Please order and go to his website, youramericanflagstore.com. Order something or just reach out and support the family. You're on all the social media, I'm
Oh, yeah.
assuming. Good.
Yep.
Uh, please support his family, his wife Ginger, and his children Max and Evie. And I am going to put in a good word for Max over at Ben Gay the Third's The Closers, and also see if he can become a maybe one of the youngest sales professionals
He's
in the
good.
association. That would be funny if he was asked to give a speech at one of their events. I think that would be amazing. Thank you, James, for being
Find him at dinner. Find him at dinner.
there. You go. Close at dinner. That's amazing. Thank you, James, for being on
Thank you for
Awakened
having
Nation, my friend. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Don't forget to tune in next week. We're going to have another great guest here on Awakened Nation. Until then, bye bye. And God bless you, James. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share this episode out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success is because of you. Thank you and see you next week.